Hey everybody, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2019 Chevy Equinox, we're going to be showing you how to install the etrailer.com base plate kit. But before we do that, why don't we check it out and make sure that this is going to work for you. So before we get too carried away talking about the base plate and how it's going to work and things of that nature, I figured it'd be beneficial just to kind of touch base and refresh yourselves on the main components that we're going to need to flat tow our Equinox down the road in the first place. So there's going to be a total of 5 main components needed. We usually like to have everything hooked up to the motorhome and really give you guys a good idea. Unfortunately today we don't have the motorhome, so bear with us here. We're trying to make do. But with that said, your first component is going to be the base plate, and that's going to provide us with a solid and reliable attachment point. That way we can hook our tow bar up to it. So tow bar is going to be the second component, and this is going to be the physical link that actually connects the front of your SUV to the back of your motorhome. Third main component is going to be safety cables. All right, and these are there in the event of an unlikely disconnect. These are going to keep your Chevy connected to your RV. The fourth main component is going to be tow bar wiring, and what this is going to do is plug into the front of your Equinox and into the back of your motorhome, and this is going to transfer the lighting signals. So that way, whenever you're flat towing behind the RV, everyone's going to know what's going on. You know, when you hit your brakes, when you turn your running lights on, or use your turn signals. And last but not least, the fifth main component is going to be a braking system. And what this is going to do is apply the brakes in your Equinox whenever you hit the brakes in your motorhome, helping bring you to a more predictable and complete stop. And there is a couple more things that I do want to recommend. They're not absolutely necessary, but I always like to suggest them, honestly, regardless of what type of vehicle you're flat towing. One of them is a battery charge line. So this one here is the Brake Buddy charge line. There's a couple others, a Roadmaster and a Demco as well. They all essentially do the same thing. What they're going to do is essentially trickle charge or maintain your Equinox's battery whenever you're flat towing it down the road. And that's important because generally speaking, I think almost every braking system uses your Equinox's battery power to operate. And so that can deplete the battery and then, you know, potentially cause you to jump start it once you get to your destination, you know, and have to constantly kind of just worried about keeping it topped off. So using a charge line like this is going to keep it topped off and ready to go and really make things a lot easier for you, give you a little more confidence whenever you get to your destination. There is one other thing I want to talk about too, and for those of you that are using a portable type braking system like a Brake Buddy Classic or a Blue Ox Patriot, just to kind of give you an example, those use a 12-volt cigarette lighter type port to operate. And on our Equinox, whenever we're in flat tow mode, the factory one doesn't have power, so you can run an additional one that's always powered to operate those braking systems. So here today on ours, we have the Roadmaster 12-volt outlet kit. Really popular kit. We used a lot of them with good success. But I just wanted to mention that for those of you that use that portable type braking system, this is something you're definitely going to have to think about to get your system powered up. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about the base plate. I just wanted to, you know, make sure you guys understand how the system, whole flat tow system works, and make sure you get what you actually need. But the base plate, this is what it's going to look like whenever you're not hooked up to your motorhome and you're just kind of cruising around town. I don't think it looks terrible by any means. Does a decent job of kind of blending in to the bottom. I mean, you can tell something's there, but you know, it doesn't stand out like crazy by any means. Compared to some of the other base plates available, they all look pretty similar. The eTrailer one here, one thing I'm not super crazy about is you can see some of the bolts. Not really a huge deal. A little bit of spray paint could fix that, just help it kind of blend in a little bit better. You know, kind of is what it is. I will say though, they are very well built. Everything's super thick steel. put together really nice. So, you know, definitely a perk there. They do give you some caps or plugs, I guess you could call them, that goes into the base plate whenever you're not using it. And these are just there to, for one, I think it kind of cleans up the appearance of it. But more importantly, too, it's just going to prevent junk and you know, debris and stuff from getting inside of there and kind of chewing everything up. So pop these in when you're not using it, and it should make everything go a little bit smoother whenever you are ready to use it. With that said, when you are ready, it is going to have some removable arms. And so what you're going to do is take these, and there's some holes in them, hole in the side, put those on in and rotate them. Then you have this pin and clip that allows them to be secured. So same deal with this one over here. Get those lined up, put in, and now that's going to provide us with that attachment point we need. That way we can hook our tow bar up to it. So this base plate is going to work with those Demco and eTrailer brand tow bars, and it also has the ability to work with a lot of other tow bars, and that's because there's adapters available. So I'll show you real quick here. In our case, we have a Roadmaster Falcon all-terrain tow bar, and all you have to do is change out the ends. So there's some adapters that we swapped on it there, and now with these adapters, you know, you'll be able to hook up that tow bar to it. So those will line up with the base plate ends and allow you to pair the two up together. So you definitely have quite a few options in terms of what tow bar you can use with this particular base plate. One thing I do like about this base plate is the safety chain openings. They are easy to get to, so it makes it easy to hook up your safety cables. You can use pretty much any size hook. You know, they're not the hugest openings in the world, but you know, they're gonna get the job done, work with quite a few different cables. And they also give you a bracket here. All right, that's this piece here, and gives you a good spot to mount up your electrical connector plug and your breakaway switch. So that kind of eliminates the need to try to fabricate something up or piece something together. Worked out pretty good. The only thing that we had to do with ours though is actually kind of the front license plate holder come down a little ways, and you really couldn't open that connector plug all the way up, at least, you know, to make it easy on you. So I did have to kind of cut maybe an inch or so off the bottom of the plate frame. Not really a huge deal. Some people, you know, don't even need a front plate or run one. So, you know, it's kind of situational depending on your particular setup. Or if you have a 4-way flat type connector instead of this round 6-way, wouldn't need to worry about it. But, you know, I just like the fact that they give you this stuff to work with, and it makes everything a little more straightforward. Other than that though, at the end of the day, you know, can't really ask too much more out of the base plate. It's gonna look pretty good and be easy to use. And when it comes to flat towing, you know, you can either run a setup like this with your base plate and tow your vehicle on all fours behind the motorhome, or your other option would be to use a car caddy type deal. I'm sure a lot of you have seen that, where it's a two-wheel trailer. You kind of pull the front of your car up on and tow it behind your motorhome like that. Nothing wrong with that, but you know, you're gonna have to think about storing that trailer somewhere, and a little more difficult to set up. You know, once you have a flat tow setup like this installed on the vehicle, it's really easy to set it up when you're ready to tow and unhook and everything. That's not always the case with a car caddy type deal. You know, you gotta store it, set it up, and from my understanding as well, these kind of just pull behind your motorhome a little bit better, as opposed to having it on a trailer. You know, it just tracks a little bit better and things like that. So definitely not a bad way to go by any means. And as far as getting this installed, I'm not gonna lie, it is a little bit of work. Definitely not the most challenging one that I've done, but definitely not the easiest. You do have to remove the fascia and drill some holes to get this installed, but that's pretty much the norm in terms of putting a base plate on any type of SUV. So as long as you stay focused, really shouldn't give you a ton of issues. But speaking of that, why don't we go ahead and put it on together now. To begin our installation, we're going to be here at the front of our Equinox, and we need to remove our front fascia. That way we can get the base plate on. We're going to pop the hood, and then on each half of our grill, on each side, we're going to have a total of 3 T15 Torx bit screws that we need to pull out. So grab our bit, get all these removed. And I want to mention from this point on, anything we do to one side of the vehicle, we're going to do to the other side as well, because it'll be set up the same way. So now on the side of our vehicle, if we look just in front of our front tires, along this edge here in our wheel well, we're going to have 5 T15 Torx bit screws. So again, we'll grab our bit and get them pulled out. Once you have that, all them out, you can kind of grab your wheel well liner and pull that up a little ways. Kind of tuck it out of the way, because we are going to have a fastener up in this area that we need to pull out too. So if we look right here where our quarter panel meets our front fascia, we're going to have a screw with the 7mm head on it. So grab our socket and get that removed. Underneath of our vehicle, on each side, we're going to have 4 7mm head screws. So one will be that one there in the corner. Pull that on out. We'll just work our way around. One here. There. And one more towards the center. Now at the next set of hands, we can remove our fascia. And if you look right here, we're gonna have this tab. What I like to do is kind of lift up on those first. And then coming here to our corner, I put some tape, that way we don't scratch anything up on accident. And what you do, you can kind of grab the fascia, and I'm just going to kind of work it back and forth, just try to loosen stuff up because everything's really tight. And I'm going to take a trim tool and kind of work my way in there, trying to release some of these clips. So take your time at this, because everything is just so tight. It's really hard not to break those clips. So if one or two of them does crack, it's usually not a huge deal. With the screw and everything else that holds the fascia in place, once we have that off, we can continue to work our way around the front. Pull the fascia off. We may have some electrical connectors. In our case, looks like we have one over here on the passenger side. So it looks like we're gonna have 2 connectors, one here. Pull back on that red tab. And then you can push down on that center portion, separate it. And this connector here, this is kind of an odd one. Looks like we should be able to push down on it, separate it. And with everything released, we'll set our fascia off to the side somewhere safe. What we need to do now is, on the driver's side, remove our headlight. So there's going to be 4 screws. One will be here. This is 7mm. And then if we continue along, if you look right there, I have another one. I'll pull that out. Then up top, we're gonna have 2 more. So one right there. And then one all the way up here in this corner. That should be it. So what I'm gonna try to do is grab our light, pull it out, and then we'll need to disconnect it. So there's our connector, red tab. Pop that out. And sometimes these are really tight. Oh, there it went. Sometimes they're super tight. If it is, you can get a flathead screwdriver. Just use that to get a little more leverage. Push down on the center, release it, and move our light out of the way. At this point, we need to move our washer fluid reservoir off to the side a little ways. And I think what we're gonna do here is gonna work. We're gonna have a wire here. We just pop that out. Just a retainer. And I guess while we're at it, I'll do this one too. And we're gonna have 3 nuts and bolts that we need to pull out. So one of them will be this one here, 10mm. One will be right there. Another 10. And then one here. So and hopefully what we can do is kind of grab this and kind of just swing it up, maybe something like that. Then I'm just going to take a bungee cord and just kind of strap it up like this. If you look here, we're gonna have these rubber air deflector deals, and we need to trim some of it out of the way. That way our base plate will fit. So I'm just using a pair of snips. So I'll cut there. And kind of just cut our way around this. Probably take a little of this off as well. Usually in the past, I found out you try to kind of cut as little as possible, but then you run into issues with the base plate fit and you have to kind of redo it. So I usually cut out a little bit more. It's not gonna hurt anything. Go ahead and continue to work my way up here until we have this removed. If you look right here in this area, we're gonna have a wire that is secured to our frame. And our base plate's gonna be going in this area. I feel like it'd just be easier just to get this out of the way. That way we're not fighting it. So trim tool, screwdriver, whatever you got, pry that out and just kind of push it out of the way for now. Now with the next set of hands, we can take our base plate and we're gonna get this in position. So it's gonna kind of line up with those 2 flanges there. And we want to push it as tight as we can against the back and the top up here. And you're going to take a clamp and kind of clamp it in place to hold it secure for now. So trying to get that base plate in position, I feel like I want to go back all the way. And I think what's happening is it was hitting this piece of plastic. So I'm just gonna cut out that area, and that should give us at least a good, probably another 1/8 inch of space there, and hopefully that'll let the base plate fit a little bit better. So with that out of the way, we'll put the base plate back on again. So once you have the base plate in place, clamped down, you could get a couple holes drilled, 3/8 drill bit. I'm gonna do one in the center on the side, one in the center on the top. Be careful when you're doing this too. You know, you don't want your drill to punch all the way through and potentially hit something behind there. So if you feel better putting a block of wood or something back there, by all means do so. If not, just keep that in mind. So take my bit and get these holes drilled out. Once you have those holes drilled out, you can take these bolts, push it through, and go to the other side and get the nuts started. So we're gonna have these nylon lock nuts, 2 of them, that we're gonna put on the other ends of the bolts. And you wanna take the included blue Loctite and put some on the threads. And all of the hardware that we're gonna be using to secure the base plate is gonna receive that Loctite. So go ahead, get these started hand tight. And then we can come back and snug them down. So we'll come back with a 9/16 socket and wrench and tighten down the hardware. Once we have it tight, we can remove our clamps. Just kind of a trick I figured I'd share. If your base plate ends up kind of shifting on you, a lot of times these aren't just gonna fit perfect. So, you know, when you're doing the other side, if it shifts, you're just not completely happy with it, it's not as flush as you'd like it to be. What I did is actually took a ratcheting strap, kind of wrapped it around our base plate and then around part of our frame, cranked down on it, and it sucked everything up nice and tight how we want it to be. So had it like that, re-put our clamp on it, really happy with it. So I'll go ahead and drill these holes out now too. If you look right here, we're gonna have this plastic piece on our bumper beam. You pull that out, that'll expose 4 bolts underneath it. We're gonna remove them with a 13mm socket. Once you have that out, what you can then do is take these side braces, all right, and they're gonna be side specific. So ours were actually labeled, so make sure you got the right one. That's gonna sneak in there behind our bumper beam. And then we're gonna take our bolts. Forgot to put Loctite on these beforehand here, no big deal. We'll get some on the threads there. So once we have all those coated with Loctite, we can then get these reinstalled, and we're not gonna tighten them down all the way just yet. We're simply just gonna get them hand tight. Just enough to kind of keep the bracket from coming out, more or less. And then what we're gonna do is these holes in our bracket are gonna line up with a couple holes there in our base plate. And we can take these larger 1/2-inch bolts, put on your Loctite, push those through, We'll come around to the other side and get the nut started. So other side, we'll get a nylon lock nut. We'll get these started. And then we're gonna come back with a 3/4 inch socket and wrench and snug these down. Once those are snug, we'll switch back over to our 13 and snug up these. So once those brackets are tight, come back to your base plate and we're gonna have 3 more holes. So just like before, we'll take a drill bit and drill them out. Once you got those 3 holes drilled out, just like these 2, you can take your shorter bolts, Loctite, and your nylon lock nut and get them all started. And finally, now we can come back with a torque wrench and tighten down all of the hardware to the amount specified in the instructions. If you don't have a torque wrench, you can grab one here at eTrailer, or a lot of times if you go to your auto parts store, they'll have one there available to rent. At this point, what you need to do is take the included safety cables and get them installed. So all I did was take one of the D-links, put it around the hole in our base plate, took a safety cable, kind of wrapped it around the frame. I think I went around 2.5 times and then tied it in on itself. So that's how that turned out. I like to take some zip ties afterwards and just kind of secure everything. That way this isn't clanking around when we're going down the road. But you're gonna do it on each side of our vehicle. Now what we can do is come back to our fascia and get it trimmed out a little bit. That way it'll fit around the base plate. So there's a diagram and the instructions. And essentially we're just gonna cut out this little section here. So I put a couple marks there and a few different things you can use. I'm going to use a pair of snips like this. You can use a Dremel tool, a little jigsaw type deal, whatever you got, whatever you think's going to work the best. But go ahead and get this material trimmed out. And you can do this if you want. If your wiring is going to work with it, they actually give you a bracket that you can use a couple bolts to attach to your base plate, give you a good spot to mount it. So if that's going to work for you, by all means, you can do that. But we're going to hold off at this point of reinstalling the fascia, and we're going to do that because we're going to do the rest of our flat toe components, wiring, braking system, things like that. And with the fascia off, it just makes it a lot easier to do all that other stuff. You have all this extra room to work and everything else. So once I get all that on, we'll come back, get the fascia on. If you're not installing those components, I already have them installed. You would simply just reinstall the front fascia the opposite way that you removed it. Now with an extra set of hands, we can reinstall our front fascia. So be sure to plug any electrical connectors back in that you may have disconnected. And once we do that, if I can manage to get everything lined up here with one hand. So once we have it plugged in, we'll go ahead and get this reinstalled the opposite way that we removed it. So once you have your fascia back on, one thing that I realized was it was really difficult to open up our connector plug cap all the way. And that's because it was hitting the plastic license plate cover here. And so I found a solution. All I did was lift the plate up, maybe about, I don't know, it was 1.5 inches or so, and simply just trimmed that portion off. And now we're able to completely open up our cap. And so with that, you know, lifting the plate up a little ways, you just had to, you know, drill a couple new holes where the screws would go and bolt it back into place. And the plate's secure, not going anywhere, looks almost factory, and now gives us complete, easy access to the connector plug. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the etrailer.com base plate kit on our 2019 Chevrolet Equinox.